Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Brandon, Community Manager with the University of Phoenix. And today we're having an honest conversation about taking charge in your career. The idea of taking charge can be challenging as careers and technology evolve. Today we're answering your questions on this topic and sharing how you can take charge in your career through cultivating an attitude of ownership and creating your career narrative. Joining us are University of Phoenix Market Director Bob Danielle and University of Phoenix Career Advisor Carol Camarino. Thank you for joining us. Now, Bob is going to discuss cultivating an attitude of ownership.
Thanks, Brandon, and thanks everyone for joining us today. So I'm going to kick this off by asking our audience a question, and that question is, who do you think owns your career? And I want you to start putting that into the chat, and I'll just wait to see what responses we get. So as I'm looking at the responses come in, I wanted to point out that when this question is asked in the workplace, most of the employees say that it's their employer who owns their career path. And most of the employers say that it's the employee that owns the career path, which is kind of interesting. You can see kind of a disconnect. But what's even more interesting and more of a demonstration of the perception of ownership is that these answers are not 100%, meaning that if someone says that someone else owns their career, it's not 100%, there's not 100% commitment or 100% of agreement of the answer, which kind of lends itself to this concept, I think, that helps best demonstrate what that might look like. And it's a concept of, renting versus owning. And so one of the things that I like to do, I like to talk about, is the idea of renting an automobile or renting a car. So for those of you that have ever rented a car before or know somebody who rent a car, I'm going to ask you like 3 questions, okay? And so the first question is, do you wash your rental car? Or do you know anybody that's ever washed a rental car? Question number 2, have you ever changed the oil in your rental car? Changed the battery, changed the starter. You might change the tire if you got stuck. So that's question 2. And question 3, do you personalize your rental car? Do you, put something from the rearview mirror? Do you put the little sun creatures that move back and forth? And so, I suspect as you're answering that question, if you have at least 2 no's in there, you have a pretty good understanding that there's a big difference between renting and owning. Okay, so renting is in a lot of ways, even if you take responsibility and you care for it, it's never really yours. Okay, it's one of those deals where you're borrowing it. You may use it for some time, and then eventually you'll get to a point where you'll have to return it. It's a very passive approach, and in many ways, it's a lot of transactional approaches. And so when you rent something, you really are a passenger in a car that someone else is driving, that's taking you wherever you want, wherever they want, where they want to stop, where they want to go. And in a lot of ways, you have really no control of that situation. And so that's what renting kind of looks and feels like. Ownership, on the other hand, looks and feels a little bit differently. So ownership might look like, you're standing up tall. There's a little bit of a hop in your step. You're not letting other people finish your sentences, right? And also the way it feels is a little bit different as opposed to just feeling a sense of pride and purpose and accomplishment. There's a physical issue or physical presence with the ownership. Okay, you when you think about it, your chest is beating a little bit faster. You can't get it out of your head. You can't live with it. You can't live without it. And yes, that might be love, but what you're really feeling is a combination of passion, commitment, confidence, purpose. And all of these are what I call the fuel of ownership, which allows you to be that driver of that car that takes you on that career journey, where you can stop and start and move to different places when you want to, not when someone else tells you to. And so, before I, wrap up this kind of conversation about ownership, I will tell you that ownership is something that is contagious. It'll it'll take over the other areas of your life, and you'll begin to start to feel not just a sense of purpose, but a sense of self. But if you're going through, this my speech, my dialogue here, and you're saying to yourself, Bob, I've never even rented a car, and to be honest, I'm not even sure whether or not I can take ownership of my career path. I will tell you this. If you get up every morning to feed your children, take care of your family, or do the things that help others, then that's ownership. If you get up every day and go to work to take care of the things that you need to take care of in order to take care of those, including yourself, that's ownership. If you go to school every day and complete your assignments and take diligence in your studies and try to be your very best, that's ownership. And if you do those things, any one of those, each and every day, I have the utmost belief that you'll be able to take charge and control of your career.
And it's about recognizing the things that we do have control over, right? And taking pride in, like you said, ownership of that. Excellent. Thank you, Bob. Now, Carol is going to discuss controlling your narrative. Carol? Hey, Carol, you might need to unmute yourself.
Oh no, I was that person.
Oh, yeah, you're perfectly fine.
So I said, thank you, Brandon and Bob. I really love that analogy. That's such a great one. So I'm going to talk to everybody about career narratives now. And I'm going to first tell you what a career narrative is and why it matters, and then share a three-step process that you can kind of follow to create your career narrative. So what is this thing called a career narrative? I was thinking about how to explain it, and then I thought, maybe I'll just show. I'll give a demonstration. So I'm going to answer a typical interview question, and many people here will probably have had this question. The beginning interview question of the century, tell me about yourself, or sometimes it's phrased, walk me through your resume. And I'm going to answer it two ways. First, I'll do facts only, and then I'll do more of a narrative approach, kind of using the career narrative idea. And I would love for you to put in the chat which one, when I'm done with both, is more interesting, more memorable, more compelling. So you can just put in there fact-based or narrative. Okay, so here I go. Fact-based answer. Tell me about yourself. I started in 2016 as a cashier, and I worked in customer service. I then became an assistant store manager at All Goods. And then I left and went to Big Marts, and where I work in the regional distribution center. I have a bachelor's degree in business and a certificate in operations. Okay, that was the facts-only version. And now I'll give you a different version that is a narrative version. So I'm currently team lead, acting as assistant manager for all soft goods at Big Marts regional distribution center, serving a 4-state area. This role is the role where I realized how much I really enjoy supply chain and logistics. And the pandemic has been a real learning experience, to say the least. Like everybody else, it was a challenge to get products on the shelves, and I'm really proud of what my team and I were able to accomplish. Before I joined here, I was working at All Goods, and I started as a cashier, but was promoted to customer service within 3 months because a manager saw how I handled some difficult customer situations. And then I was promoted to assistant manager within 12 months. Okay, so which one was more interesting, told you more about me as a candidate if you were the interviewer, gave insight into how I manage my career, the decisions I've made, what I've learned. So you can put fact or narrative. And I can't follow the chat because there's a lag, but if narrative isn't by and far the winner, it's on me because I didn't do a good job. Narrative. So why are they important? Well, first off, for candidates being interviewed, it's important to be memorable, to stand out. So that's one reason. Next, when you are telling a narrative or a story, it's much easier to build rapport and relationship and connection. In fact, there have been studies that show that Storytellers, when people are listening to a story, their brain waves can actually begin to synchronize with the storyteller. So that's pretty powerful about connecting and building relationships. Next, narratives provide an opportunity to highlight what we want or what we need to tell people and what we want to convey, not leaving it up to chance and hoping people make connections and get the inferences when they don't have the context that we do. And lastly, narratives allow you to provide listeners with access to you on a deeper level. They get a peek at your priorities, your possibilities, your potential, and your humanity. And that's really, really important step for your career and job search and moving forward. Okay, so now 3 steps. I came up with this. I love alliteration, so it's 3 C's. Consider, create, and consult. So first step, take your resume. If you don't have your resume, think of all your experiences, your education, and give thought to the what's and the hows and the whys around decisions, pivots. Think about learnings that you've had, ahas, surprises. Even the challenging times can be infused into the narrative, especially in terms of how you handled it and what you learned. So that's consider. Next, create. Actually, start writing, jot down notes. And I think using that interview question of tell me about yourself is a great way to start. So think about how you would answer that question now with this idea of narrative above and beyond just the facts. Then consult. I was going to put collaborate, so it's kind of both. Test it out. Say it to some trusted friends, a mentor, or you can even reach out to us at Career Services because we can help with that. It's so integral to your job search and your professional career management. All right, so that's it, the 3 steps. Consider, create, and consult. Oh, one more. Make sure then you apply it. Once you have this idea of storytelling around your career, start thinking about how you would answer other questions in an interview situation. Think about how you would introduce yourself in professional settings. Think about your priorities now in light of that narrative and how that shapes professional development planning and roles you might be interested in moving forward. Now I am.
Thank you, Carol. And for everyone, remember those 3 C's. They're also important to controlling your career narrative. Now, I'd like to obviously thank both of our panelists for participating in today's live stream. And we're going to open the floor up to the questions and answers segment. So our first question is from Diane F. My former employer used to say that work morale was up to the individual. Shouldn't that be a shared responsibility?
So Bob and I are going to do rock, scissors, paper, right?
You know what? I'll jump in on that one. So, I am a strong believer, and again, this is just my opinion, that if you're a leader of an organization or a leader of people, that it is part of your responsibility to make sure that the motivational factors are in place for people to be all they can be, right? To achieve the success they have. But I also believe that there is a shared responsibility between the colleagues, the teammates, because I think that's what makes organizations great, right? So, you don't want everything to be one-sided, because then you're only going to get one side of the opinion or one side of the story. I like the idea of having a motivated group of individuals with morale as high as it can be, because that's where innovation, creativity, and all the things that take a okay or good company to becoming a great organization.
And that's excellent. I'll just jump in and add my 2 cents. Totally agree. As leaders, hopefully that's a priority. And but we also have some agency in the equation as well. And so if you're navigating through some difficult times, tap into your resilience and look to build that, and where you can infuse positivity and optimism.
Focusing on your controllables, right? I mean, it's also important.
Right.
All right, let's go on to the next question here. It's from Katie E. Why would you want to be active versus passive in terms of cultivating an attitude of ownership in your career?
I'll jump in. I'll jump in on that one. So being active, just the word active is very an action verb, right? And so what you want to do is just to consider what happens if you're not active, right? So I think I've said this in previous calls. I do a lot of research on opportunity, and one of the things that's the opposite of opportunity is regret, right? So when you look at the topic of regret, what you find that 75% of those that say they have regrets in their life talk about the things that they didn't do. They don't talk about the things that they don't regret the things they did. They regret the things that they didn't do. So being active, especially when it comes to, building ownership and building your voice and telling your story, is just a way that you can, one, not live in a world of regret, and two, it's going to give you the greatest bang for your buck, for lack of a better word, right? It gives you a return on what you've built. It gives you a return on the career capital that you have built over the years. So that's why I believe it's really important to take a very active approach, not just in the ownership of your career, but in everything that you do in your life.
And I'll just add that when you have an active approach to management of your career, you're not waiting to be tapped for the next role or to be recognized. Take your plan, your goal, look for the opportunities, take on extra assignments, as opposed to being waiting to be asked.
Yeah, let's live with no regrets. Take some action and stand out. All right, we'll move on to our next question here. It's from Louis R. What are the 3 C's again?
Consider. I had to think of them myself, and I made them. Consider, create, consult, and consult could be also collaborate.
I need to write those down myself, or I'll just get the notes from you afterwards. All right, we'll go on to our next question here. How can I control my career narrative when I'm in a funk? That's from Alyssa S.
I know Bob also has things too that he probably could add from his perspective. So I'll start us off this time, Bob. So that idea of being in a funk, that's a huge question, and there are a lot of ways we could go about answering it. So I'll just offer this. Sometimes switching your focus can open up a lot of doors in your brain and help you get a fresher look, fresher viewpoint. So if you're in a funk in your career, if you're not sure which way to turn, try to do something else. Switch gears, go outside, take a walk, get some exercise, make sure you're taking care of yourself, speak to a trusted advisor, get some brainstorming, read, meditate, just open up your space. You can get caught in these, I'll call them a vicious cycle, for lack of a better word, of kind of negative self-talk. And so that's where getting a break in that by changing what you're doing can be helpful, and then you get new ideas.
And to kind of dovetail on Carol's points is that, the first thing you need to do is recognize that you're in a funk, right? And that it's okay, because life is really kind of a roller coaster ride, and some roller coasters are, higher or low than others. So you have to recognize that you're going to experience in these ups and downs. But, from a personal perspective, when I feel like I'm in a little funk, it's almost like something is trying to kickstart me, right? There's just think of the seed that's trying to come up through the soil. It doesn't just pop up, right? It has to move a couple of pieces of dirt here and there and eventually weave its way up. So a funk is just a really kind of a sign for you to kind of take a really kind of closer look at what's going on, not just in your career life, your personal, professional life, but also in your personal life. The other thing that I would say that I'm very fortunate to have is that I've been able to surround myself with folks that really know me well, that will, tell me if I've got something in my teeth, but not necessarily always tell me what I want to hear. But they're very good about telling me the things that I do well, and they do it in a way because they are invested in my success, as I am invested in their success. So if you're experiencing that, it's one, good to not good to recognize that it's happening and it's not a bad thing, but at the same time, not just look into yourself, but also look to others for some ideas on how you can get yourself out of it.
Yeah, we all go through it from time to time. It's just like you said, recognizing, having someone else recognizing, hey, you have something in your teeth. Watch out. All right, next question here. It's from Kat D, sorry. How can we get past the reference for a job and get the job?
So I want to make sure I understand that question. How can we get past the reference for a job and get the job? So I'm going to answer it if the question is, how do you figure out how to get references? So that is a really important thing to do, to get your references lined up ahead of time, and make sure that people that you're going to put on your reference list when it comes down to the time to give your references, which are not on your resume, but further on in the process, but that you check them, you talk to them, you let them know that you're going to use them. You can share with them a copy of your resume so you can speak to, you can refresh their memory if it's been a while since they've worked with you. So yeah, I don't know if that was quite the answer though, Brandon. I don't know if that was the answer to the question that was asked.
So I'll do a different interpretation. One of the things that that I view this as is that if you do get a referral for a, let's just say someone refers you for a position, or someone knows some inside an organization that, can get you into the interview process. I think this is truly the epitome of ownership in a lot of ways, because sometimes we're given opportunities and they get us to the front door, but at the end of the day, we have to figure out, how we can completely open it, right? And how we can step up and basically close the deal, for lack of a better word. So I would say if you're referring to someone that is referring to you or is willing to vouch for your credentials or your candidacy, then I would say take a really close look at the things that you bring to the table and be able to articulate them to whoever is that next stage in the process, right? And from there, you can only go up. And the other thing to take into consideration is that sometimes when people invite you in, they're not just necessarily looking for that position. They may be looking for others. So I always look at as an interview or a referral as an opportunity to showcase my skill sets that they may need now or may need in the future. So hopefully that answers the question. But if you want to rephrase that would be great as well. Carol
I want a second chance at that, because if it's referrals, oh my gosh, that's another great way to interpret this. Referrals are so important. Networking is really what we're talking about. And networking is something that somehow became synonymous with asking people if they have a job for you, and that can feel really uncomfortable and icky. But there is a strategy around networking that is a more authentic approach. And the other thing about getting referrals for jobs and networking is that I would encourage everybody who's listening to make networking just part of their overall career management plan. And it's not only about what people can help you, it's extending your hand and seeing when you can make introductions to people yourself and when you can pass names along. So networking, if I had a magic wand, everybody would be doing it on a regular basis, not just during job search.
Yeah, networking is huge. I mean, we have, over 1 million alumni here at University of Phoenix. I mean, tap into it. I mean, there's so many of us are willing to help each other out, right? So, all right, we'll move on to our next question here. It's from Rochelle D. She asks, what if I am not that creative when creating my career narrative, even if I know I have the skills?
You don't have to, being super creative isn't necessarily the important part of it. It's infusing the important details above and beyond just the facts. And so practicing ahead of time, writing it out, saying it out loud, bouncing it off with a few people to see how did that sound. There really isn't a substitution for saying it aloud. then going from there and practicing. But yeah, don't worry about necessarily the creative part. It's really about infusing those extra details that tell the bigger story beyond the dates and the places and the job titles.
Yeah, I would add. I would add to that by saying that the one thing that Carol's absolutely right. It's not about being creative. It's about being able to tell your story. All of us have somebody or know somebody that we can tell a story to, whether it's a funny joke or if it's just a casual conversation. And so, really, you have to sometimes you have to take the formality out of the process in order to have a formal process. If that makes any sense. It's a relaxing conversation that you can have, and not just that's not just focused on your career. And but I would also say is that have those take an inventory of those skills and the things that you do really well, and put those on the side, right? And then take a peek at them, and then think about a situation where you might have used one of them or two of them or three of them. And that's actually building your narrative. And then as time goes on, you start to layer it, and it becomes a little more, becomes a little more deeper, and it takes different directions. So you don't have to eat the elephant in one bite, but you do have to take a step towards the elephant if you want to eat it, right? So small steps, right? You don't want to scare the elephant. So.
And some of the best stories are the ones with the details, right? They're most memorable. So include those details. All right, we'll go on to our next question here. It's from Olivia S. She asks, with the pandemic right now, what's a good way to stay motivated for your career/education?
So I'll jump in. It's such a great question. A really great question, because these are challenging times. And so one thought I will toss out is to create your own VIP team. Your very important people who are your go-tos, and you can say, listen, can I reach out to you and check in with you, or will you check in with me and ask me how things are going? I really could use an extra dose of motivation, and for me, having some accountability partners and people that I can debrief difficult situations, or when I feel like I'm slowing down on something, you'll help me and you'll say, remember, you asked me to keep you accountable and keep you on path. So that's one idea.
And I would add that one of the things that the pandemic has done for me is it's reminded me of the things that I value, the things that are important to me, the things that that I wish I could do and I can't really do right now. And so, and what it also reminded me is that my goals and my dreams and my aspirations really haven't changed. What has changed is really the path in which I go to achieve them. So I would say, if you want to stay motivated, remember the things that you need and you want to do, right? And use them as your North Star. Use them as your lighthouse. If you're, wherever you are, you can see them and really gravitate towards them and continue to kind of, push towards them, and remember why you're doing it, because the why is what motivates us. Sometimes the what and the how are a little more in the minutia, but remembering the why you're doing it, and everything else will start to fall into place, and it'll actually, motivate you to want to continue to do it. And who knows, it may motivate you to do some things that you never thought possible.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have some trusted friends and family that we check in with each other all the time just to make sure that you're doing okay and I'm doing okay. So it's a symbiotic relationship. It's nice. Keep you motivated. All right, we'll do a few more questions here before we wrap up. We have Thomas C. He says, I'm in my early 50s. Is it too late to make a career change?
Okay, ready, Bob? 1, 2, 3. No. I thought we would say that together.
I was muted.
Another great question. No, it's not too late. But in that question, there are a lot of mini questions, I'm sure. People are concerned about how easy will it be to get a job? Can I make a career change at this stage in my life? Does age discrimination exist? And people are asked that. So I'm just going to quickly say, it's not too late. We are, I forget what the retirement age is, but it's getting extended. People have experience and knowledge and skills that come through life experience that they bring forth with them. So it's all about your strategy, your plan, your preparation, and then the execution of that plan. Networking comes into play, upskilling may come into play if you're making a pivot to a new career. And I would say, make an appointment with a career advisor, and we can work with you and flesh this out a little bit and help you create your strategy and your plan.
So, thanks, Kay. So I'm reminded of this story that I heard. I think I might have read it in Ann Landers, so you got to never mind the source here. And it was a story about somebody had wrote in and said, "Dear Ann Landers, I'm 45 years old and I want to go to medical school and become a doctor. And it's but I'm concerned because it's going to take 7 years, and by the time I get out, I'll be 52 years old, right?" And so Ann Landers said, without a beat, she said, "In 7 years, if you don't do anything, you're still going to be 52 years old, right?" Now, that being said, I understand ageism. I am in my 6th decade, maybe my 7th if you count before. So I have had a couple of career changes in my 50s, and so the one thing you have to be aware of is that when you're a little bit older, you have what I call an iceberg career or an iceberg resume, right? A lot of times you're told not to share the only 15 years or 10 years of your experience. So you've got like 25 years underneath the iceberg. So no one ever sees that. So I would just say that one, excuse me, it's never too late. It doesn't matter how old you are. It is never too late to change your career. You just have to always keep in mind of what value that you can bring to the organization. And yes, there are going to be folks that are just going to, judge you for a lot of different reasons. But, in a lot of ways that if you can convince them and get the opportunity to do so, that you can be a key contributor. And I like to use words like this as I've been older. I want to be a long-term contributor, right? Because they always think we're ready to, run away. And so it's just phrasing the terminology that you use and just, continue to believe yourself, speak with a confident voice, and you're going to be able to do it.
Remind them of what you bring to the table, your value and your assets. It's huge. All right. We have 2 more questions here. Claire O says, if I've mainly been passive in my career, how can I start being more active?
I'll jump in on that one. I think the first thing you need to do is, we've kind of talked about this throughout the presentation today, is one, take a great inventory, take a really good, careful, detailed inventory of all the things that you've accomplished, not just in your professional life, your personal life. I think sometimes we forget that there are some great things that we do that we don't get paid for that are very marketable and transferable, in the professional world. Number 2, get around those folks, or if you're fortunate enough to have folks that you can talk to about who you are and what you are, and that they're not going to criticize you, but they're going to try to help you. That's the other piece. The other thing that I like to do, and I've told this for folks to do this before that are very passive and in a lot of ways they're shy to speak up, is, and this is going to sound crazy, but if you can do it, step outside your door, go to the back of your house, go to an empty field, and just yell, right? Just get it out. Just know what it feels like to get your voice out there. And I got to tell you, it is a very relieving and a very, it's an inspiring feeling. It just lets you know that it's inside of you. And then the last piece I would do is, I'm a vision board guy, and unfortunately I don't have my vision board behind me, but I like to put something visually. Carol says yes. I like to put something visually. And it's not necessarily like the goals, but it's pictures of my family, of the things that I've done. And it reminds me that I do bring value. And so the more you believe in yourself, the more you'll help others believe in you too. So that's how I would go with this.
And I'm going to pick right up from there. And I'm going to that idea of vision board and creating the plan. Another career services professional whom I respect is Elizabeth Sanders Park, and she talks about casting your vision. And I think that that's a really great way to start thinking about being active in your career. If you have that idea of where you want to go, then you can start coming up with your actions and your tactics to help you move towards that.
Yeah, I like those visual cues. My wife has a dream board party every year, and they're huge just in terms of being able to see not only where you've been, but what you want to accomplish. It really works. So drum roll for our last question here. Victoria E says, does University of Phoenix have resources that can help me take charge of my career?
We have so many resources available to you as people. And we have bulk guides, we have assessments, we have resources, we have your academic counselors, we have the career services team, all available to you, a bunch of things around career preparedness. A lot of it is available right in the system when you log in Simplicity of Phoenix Life.
Yeah, in addition to what Carol has said, I mean, there's always your faculty, your other students. We have 1 million alumni. Your networks. We talked a little bit about your strategic networks. I mean, when I was going back to school, I mean, that's what drove me. I was looking for a career change, and working with faculty that had practitioner experience, that were in the industry. They were able to guide me and direct me to find folks that I could ask questions about that industry that was so different than mine. So, you just can't think of it as just, going to a website, clicking, there's a very broad-based resources. They're all around you. And if you're ever in doubt, and this is probably the biggest thing I would say, is ask. That's, again, going back to my regret comments, just ask. Ask someone, ask anyone. And you'll get, you not only get the help, you'll get the direction and the support that you need.
My advice is always contact your academic counselor, whether you're a student or an alum. If you get in contact with them, usually they know a lot of different resources that can help you. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for joining. Note that if we didn't get to your question, we'll answer it offline. You can learn more about University of Phoenix's Career Services for Life commitment at phoenix.edu/career. And with that, we hope you enjoy the rest of your week. Bye, everyone.